Save on O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner. Get 2 cans of O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner for just $8. Valid in-store only at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome to Heritage Voices, episode 88. I'm Jessica Yaquinto, and I'm your host. And today we are talking about Sámi land protection. Before we begin, I'd like to honor and acknowledge that the lands I'm recording on today are part of the Nooch, or Ute Peoples Treaty Lands, the Dinétah, and the ancestral Puebloan homeland. So today we have Tuula Sharma Vassvik on the show, and Tuula is going to introduce himself.
Hey, my name is Tuula Sharma Vassvik, as you heard. I'm coastal Sámi living in Oslo, the capital of Norway. At the moment, I'm working freelance, writing articles. I'm also working as a project leader of a project working on a guideline for Sámi photo materials in Norwegian institutions. It's a guideline that will help non-Sámi better contextualize the photo material, as it is a lot of sensitive materials, photo materials in these institutions. That's archival and museums mainly, and libraries. I also have a podcast called Vastelandferanat, which means resistance stories, but it's in English, and the English title is Sámi Stories of Resistance. I'm also making music, and I'm working on my first album, which is a lot of fun. And I'm playing live as well. And I have just started yoiking, which is a Sámi very old tradition of vocalizing, singing, but it's not singing. It's different. I could add some good yoiking artists for the show notes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm super curious now.
Yeah. I'm what's in, you could say, Western tradition would be called an activist, but what I would call a land protector. I have, since Standing Rock in 2016, when I traveled there, been very involved in land protection worldwide, of course, but also here in Sápmi. And I've been a part of some, what could we call it, some land protection camps here and protests. And the last one was actually here in Oslo. We could talk more about that later, but that's also something that I spend my time doing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll have a lot of the different things that you mentioned in the show notes, so people can check out more, like your podcast and your music article that you wrote, some different things. So definitely check out the show notes. I think that they will add a lot to this episode for sure. But yeah, I'm just super excited to have you. As I mentioned before we got on, we tend to be a little North America heavy. So very excited to talk to you and learn more about the issues that people are facing in other parts of the world. So to get us started, could you tell us a little bit more about what got you into this type of work?
I guess I started off with archaeology, studying archaeology, my bachelor's degree.
Well, how did you even get into archaeology?
It was a coincidence almost. Like, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was done with primary and, what do you say, like high school, maybe that's what you call it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just applied on a whim and and decided that was, when I got in, I decided that that's what I was going to try and do. And I was really into especially Stone Age, and also took part in some archaeological excavations, which was a lot of fun and very made me realize also that maybe that's not actually something that I would want to continue on, both because I felt like the, what can you say, like the climate at that time was a bit, I don't want to say like colonial, but I mean, just the way that people were talking, that archaeologists, my colleagues at that time, were talking about prehistory and history, made me feel like it was very closed-minded at that time. I mean, this is now a lot of years ago, so it's probably changed a lot since then. And it was actually through archaeology that I got into indigenous research or indigenous methodologies, which turned out to be what I did my master's in Tromsø. That was indigenous studies. And so I definitely acknowledge that archaeology is a very powerful tool for land acknowledgement and working alongside indigenous peoples to secure indigenous lands. So that's something that's very constructive, and definitely something that I didn't really had the knowledge about at that time. If I did, maybe I would pursue that further. But part of my story as well, as I could go into it, because it started around when I started studying with getting to know Sámi history, because in the Norwegian school system, there's maybe like 1 hour of education around Sámi history, Sámi issues. It's probably changed a bit now. I've met younger friends of mine and younger people who have seem to have a bit more of a knowledge around Sámi history and culture. But when I grew up, it was almost non-existent. So I actually got to learn about Sámi, not so much even Sámi history or Sámi culture, but the what can you say, like the way that the Western research, or in this case specifically archaeology, has deemed Sámi cultural history as very stagnant and almost, frozen in time in a way, so that there was very little interest in even researching Sámi archaeology or Sámi archaeological sites, even though there were a lot of Sámi archaeological sites that were registered. Where my father's family is from, Gangavika, on the top of what we today call Norway, but what is actually Sápmi. There is a lot of really interesting archaeological sites, and they are not protected, and they have not really been given that much attention as the really, really interesting sites they are. So, but yeah, long story short, it was through archaeology I actually got to read a bit about the way that Western archaeological research has omitted Sámi prehistory in that way, because of the racist idea that indigenous peoples are stagnant and does not evolve and change. So that was very interesting. So that kind of sent me off on a journey towards getting to know more about my own family history and background, and getting to know who I was as a Sámi person growing up in the capital of Norway. So which is very far down south. So it's not really a part of Sápmi as we see Sápmi today. But yes, a long answer.
No, I love it. Okay, so I have a tendency to ask way too many questions at once, so I'm just going to ask you one, even though I have several in my mind, which is, okay, so you switched to indigenous methodologies, and where did you go from there? Like, what did you focus on with your master's? Yeah, okay, one question.
Yeah.
What did you focus on with your master's?
I focused on Standing Rock, actually.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because since me and my Sámi friends and some people that I know were Sámi activists were going to Standing Rock, the winter 2016. I think it was the year that Trump was elected. Yeah. So we were there during that winter only for 3 weeks, but it was so amazing to be there. We were there as, trying to show solidarity and in any way we could contribute with the land protection at Standing Rock. And it was just a very life-changing experience personally for me. And it taught me so many things, both about Sámi culture, because I hadn't before that lived in a lavvu, which is almost like a teepee. I hadn't lived in a lavvu for more than, I had actually, but not during the winter. This was like 30 minus degrees in like Celsius. I don't know. I'm not sure what it would be in Fahrenheit, but it was cold. It was really cold. Standing Rock was, I'm not sure if I should contextualize, but it's in Standing Rock Reservation and on the lands of Dakota. I do think it was Dakota.
Yeah, Lakota and Dakota.
Lakota and Dakota, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it was just the fact that it was this whole camp was in these very sacred lands and funded or started by, regular people who just organically gathered from indigenous people and allies from all over the world. It was really just the whole feeling of being there felt very. It's something that I carry with me, and I think about it like almost every day, especially during the winter, because it just gave me a lot of hope. Because what we could hear from the people who also were there was that this was a healing space, and also like nothing to glamorize or anything like that. Of course, people came there and everyone brings with them their lives, right? But it was a place where, and this is something that I wrote about in my thesis as well, that a lot of people connected to their indigenous knowledges and spiritualities and themselves and their elders in a very it was a place that gave people an opportunity to reconnect. And it just worked so beautifully with the way that the camp was set up, just with a kitchen space or several kitchen spaces. The toilets were so well kept. It was like this really a good system that was put in place to make everything, work in these freezing temperatures. And I was just so impressed. And so it made me look at the future with a bit of a better, it made me feel like we have a future. I don't know how to say it differently. Because, when we come together and organize based on those values that are really the core values of a lot of Indigenous people's lives and traditions. I think it really gives a great structure to build community around, and a well-functioning community as well. So I feel like this is something that definitely we as Sámi land protectors brought with us as inspiration, and as something that we definitely want to see more of in Sápmi and in other places. Just that way of coming together. And it was also just, as I said, very organically formed in the way that people found what they were there to do. And it all kind of formed together in a very functional way of living. Like people were chopping wood for each other. We were all taking care of each other. And that was just so beautiful to experience. So even though it was it was probably a traumatizing experience for many people, with the violent clashes with the security, and yes, just a blatant, really re-encountering, ancestral trauma. I think it also gave us a lot of power. So I'm just very, very grateful. I think all of us in that group were just so grateful that we got to be there and to take part in something so beautiful. And yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear about that. Hear about Standing Rock from a different perspective. Heard several people talk about it, and it's always interesting. But definitely somebody like from outside the U.S. talking about it, it's really interesting. So yeah, we're already at our first break point, but when we come back, I'd love to hear more about, when you came back from Standing Rock and what direction that pushed you in, and, like where you went from there, essentially. So we will be right back here in a moment.
Is your vehicle stopping like it should? Does it squeal or grind when you brake? Don't miss out on summer brake deals at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Save on O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner. Get 2 cans of O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner for just $8. Valid in-store only at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Okay, so coming back from our break, let's go back to, you had this really life-altering experience at Standing Rock, and then you go home, and where do you go from there?
Yeah, so I didn't really know what I was going to write my master thesis about. And I was encouraged to write about Standing Rock, or my experience there, our experience there. So I decided to go with that. And that felt, at the time, it felt a bit overwhelming, as it was just so much still to process. But then I figured out that I wanted to base my thesis on interviews of several women who were there. And it was Holy Elk and Sinkala Mahpiawin Black Owl and Sara Marielle Gaup Beska. So the two first of my interviewees were both from Standing Rock, and Marielle Gaup Beska was one of my the ones that I stayed in camp with from Sápmi. And yeah, so what I found really challenging about writing about it is that I had some issues with, actually saying anything about it that was, from this outsider perspective that I had. I wanted the story to be told, or this analysis to come from, these women who had been in this struggle for a long time, and whose struggle was closer to them, right, than it was for me. So, and I also wanted to bring another Sámi perspective, because I felt that it was a nice way to bring it all together in a way, and to compare and see the similarities and the differences. And definitely I would love to have had a lot longer than I did, but it really was a nice experience for me writing it. I didn't finish in time. I spent a lot longer than my peers. But yeah, I definitely love doing work or writing in that way in that mindset, that this is not, only my story, it's the people that I'm writing together with. And so I was encouraged by my supervisors and others to, analyze more of their stories, and to, in a way, pick and pull different parts of it more. And, I definitely didn't want to use a framework that was, that can be in a way, it's a very unequal power balance that is created when a researcher, interviews someone for their research. It even though it was just a master thesis, I felt like I didn't want to recreate that whole power balance or non-balance that so often can come through in those contexts. So, I mean, of course, it was hard to do that, because I didn't really have the support at the place I was studying to do it within those within indigenous methodologies. Yeah, so I was told that I should try to keep it objective at the same time as, or keep some objectivity at the same time as they wanted me to use indigenous methodologies. So it made me feel like they didn't really understand what indigenous methodologies was at the time. And so I had to go and research it myself. And that is when I really got to read up on, yes, in Tromsø, at the Tromsø University, they actually have a whole library dedicated to indigenous studies, which is amazing. So I just got to stay there and read up on everything that I wanted to. And so from that, I managed to do something that I felt was more in accordance with how I wanted this story to be told, respectfully. And it was a very interesting, when I was interviewed by the examinators for my master's thesis, defending my master's thesis. They had never read anything like it, which also maybe says something about the amount of people in the Norwegian part of Sápmi who knew about this way of doing research at the time. But it's years ago now, so it's probably changed a lot. But yeah, it was really interesting to see how they reacted to it. It ended well. So I was really encouraged to take that way of writing further. And I have been writing since, trying to remember that there's always this writing and presenting people's stories. There's a lot of power in that, and it's very important that you respect the people that you are writing with or about, and that they get to be a part of that process. So I'm really happy that I learned that, because it's also changed. I mean, Indigenous researchers, especially from Turtle Island First Nations researchers within Indigenous methodologies have, and also like New Zealand, Linda Tuai Smith. There's so many amazing researchers who have done so much work to, kind of turn the Western ways of looking at the world on themselves and making Western traditions of research in a way, realizing that, there's so many ways of looking at the world and looking at nature, looking at people, looking at history. And I'm very, very grateful that I got to read up on all of these amazing people's work. So yeah, I've tried to bring that with me, and it's definitely changed me, and it's facilitated a lot of processes within me of deconstructing my own way of thinking about the world and about myself. I mean, it's a process that you have to keep being in and moving with, but it's, yeah, definitely very grateful for that. So yeah.
Yeah. So if any of our listeners are interested in incorporating more Indigenous methodologies, or, writing more from that perspective, or anything like that, would you have any recommendations or thoughts about ways that you've approached it that you think they would maybe find helpful?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've been reading up on what's going on in the field at the moment, but there's some really good sources that I could recommend. Rauna Kwakanen is a Sámi scholar working, I think, in Canada. I think she was there the last time I checked. And she has this book called Restructuring Relations, which really had a huge impact on me. And I know that from Sámi perspectives, or from other Sámi researchers, that is it's just an amazing analysis of the situation in Sápmi today, but also I think it does apply to many, relations, both colonial and decolonial. And I mean, I'm still on Linda Tuivai Smith fangirl role. She is just amazing, and her first book, I think I'm actually not it's a classic. I can't remember the title of it right now, but I'll definitely send some more links or some more sources for you to put in the show notes.
Yeah, I think you're referencing Decolonizing Methodologies.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Of course.
Always happy to share that one.
Oh yeah. And she's probably, done a lot more. And I mean, I know that she's done so much more after that. So that was just the beginning. But if I were to say, I mean, I don't know how much you've talked about this in previous episodes, but I feel that one of the most important things when it comes to working within Indigenous contexts is listening. I feel like that's something that is, maybe a sign of the times, the fact that people don't really feel listened to, both when it comes to, I'm not sure about research these days because I haven't been a researcher for some time, but I know that a lot of people here in Sápmi don't really have much trust or faith in these systems that are in control in our areas anymore. There's just been so much, I would even use like the term I know it's maybe a bit passé and maybe people are tired of it, but gaslighting from a state level is just so it can make you lose your mind. It's a constant struggle, and I mean in these times, it's so clear just from what's going on in the world today with the genocide in Gaza, in Gaza, with the Palestinian people, and the fact that the way this system of human rights and all of these things that we have been told are these pinnacles of Western civilization, it turns out that it's not applicable to everyone. It's something that we see here in Sápmi today with several Supreme Court cases that where the state is failing or is unwilling to take into account that Sámi people have been winning in court regarding land rights issues, and we are just getting dragged. Yeah, there's a lot going on this time, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I definitely am very excited after the break to dive back into more of the current land protection efforts that you're working on in Sápmi. So we will be right back, and then we will go deeper into what's happening right now.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it, Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Is your vehicle stopping like it should? Does it squeal or grind when you brake? Don't miss out on summer brake deals at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Okay, so we were talking before the break a little bit about we were starting to kind of hint on your land protection efforts that you've been working on since. So could you tell us a little bit more about the work that you've done since your master's?
Yeah. So after my master's, after I finished my master's, I went back to Oslo. But before that, I was in Kautokeino, which is in inland in Sápmi, and that was really important for me to get to know. Sápmi is so vast, but I have mainly been on the coastal part of the Norwegian side of Sápmi. So to have the opportunity to be in Sápmi inland and to see that culture, which is very different and also has in a way been shielded a bit from the Norwegianization. I mean, it is still, of course, been very affected by it, but with regards to language and culture, I think it's unique in the way that you can still mainly hear North Sámi when you go to get your groceries, and that's the first language there, and most people speak. North Sámi there. So I went there to learn North Sámi, and that was really good. And then I went back to Oslo and got to know a bit more about the Sámi community here, which is, you know, always changing, but there's a hard core of Sámi who call themselves what's it called, like big city Sámi, and yeah, we have our own way of connecting to our Sáminess. And there's a Sámi kindergarten here that I worked in, but the past 2 years there's been a lot of Sámi movements really taking over the city center. There has been, both during last year's spring and last year's fall as well, there was huge movements, protests. So there were young activists from all over Sápmi taking over the federal government buildings in Oslo, occupying them. And I think it lasted, the first one that was in April last year, lasted for at least 2 or 3 weeks, if I'm remembering correctly. And it was really a surreal experience to be part of shutting down the government, different parts of government. And yeah, it really, you know, really brought up so many feelings for me. And I know from talking to other people who were there that, you know, it really shows you how deep this land or this government has gone, like how far they have gone to try to still try and control our lands, but also our culture. And this was a protest because we won, or the Fosen-Njarke reindeer herding district won in High Court, Supreme Court, in verdict that said that basically the windmills that were put up on their reindeer herding grazing lands, they were illegal. They weren't. They didn't go through the process in a correct way, basically. So it was. It's illegal, and it's based on indigenous human rights. Yeah. So basically, they won in High Court against the state, and deeming this windmill park illegal. But the state still, because they said that the verdict doesn't say what we are going to do about these windmills. It just says that it's illegal. It doesn't say that we need to do anything about it. So that basically meant that they felt that the state managed to twist this case into being something that was still up in the air. From their perspective, they argued that the windmills, they are illegal, but they don't say that no one tells us what we have to do. So, or the verdict doesn't say what we have to do about it. So, maybe we don't really need to do anything about it, which of course is like, I don't really even have words for it because it's just, it's crazy.
Yeah. So
basically the state said that we need to go through this whole case, and you know, this is something that this reindeer sida, the Fosen sida, has been, or one of the Fosen sidas has been, you know, working on for decades, right? when they first planned this windmill park, from that minute they started working to prove that this would be very destructive for the reindeer, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So, these reindeer herders and their families have been under a lot of pressure for decades. And the state basically uses bureaucracy to drag out and wear out Sámi reindeer herders. And this is not the only case, it is there's several other instances where they basically are doing the same. And there's another case going on now regarding land rights to Garashoga, which also is on the Norwegian side of Sápmi, where they basically in court settled that this is the land belongs to these people who come from this area. But the state wants to take this to high court. And this is just something that we're seeing, all over, that when in court, even we win and we argue and we use everything that we have to show that this is, inherently Sámi lands and this is our human rights as indigenous peoples. The state of Norway keeps pushing, and so it feels like we're still in the midst of the worst colonial history. I mean, it's not history even, and so it's very much taking place as we in these times as well. And many people say that it's much worse now than it's ever been. So yeah.
Interesting. So are there other land protection efforts that you're working on in addition to these wind turbines?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not working on it as of now, but I'm keeping the situation on the coast, trying to follow what's going on there. And it's kind of overwhelming because there's so many areas now that are under attack, and both by these big fish farms, and they have already almost fished up all of the fish on the coast of where my father is from. So that's something that's been happening for a long time, and they're still very much continuing. But the fish farms is something that the Norwegian state is, they're really going for this fish farming thing because it's a product that sells well. So they're trying to establish more and more of these, which is kind of insane because we have so many examples from other parts of the world where we see what it's doing to the ecosystem. And there's so much research on this, both from animal welfare perspective, but also from ecological perspective. And it's nothing good about it. So the way it's been done now, which is like in the sea, no protection, all of the toxic and all of the disease, all of the waste from these terrible fish farms are going straight into the ocean. The farmed salmon is escaping and mating and with wild salmon, as well as polluting and contaminating with their diseases that they're bringing on to the wild salmon. So it's a very destructive to the environment, we could say for sure. Somehow the Norwegian state keeps on planning these and building these or giving permits to build these fish farms all over. And in the area where my father is from, Gangavika, I have this really weird memory of just hearing my uncle, who's always been so, his passion is smoking salmon. And hearing him say a couple of summers ago, well, I think we just have to, get used to the fact that we can't get wild salmon anymore. It's very, very hard. And that was just so, it was just so sad, because I know that this is something that my family has done forever. And somehow my uncle is the one, and also my aunt are the ones that have been keeping these traditions alive. And it's just so plain to see that what's happening with the fish farming is having very clear consequences for us and for all the Sámi people who are living in that area, and non-Sámi as well, of course. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening, and please don't buy farmed salmon from Norway. Just don't.
Our lesson from the podcast.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to add that in the show notes. So in addition to those efforts, are there any other, since we're basically at the end of this last segment, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we close out?
Yeah, I think that what I'm trying to do with my podcast, Vasteland Färanat, is sharing some people's stories, mainly Sámi people's stories, about how to resist on a very personal, bodily, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but like on a very personal plane. And for many Sámi people, that really also, of course, also includes land protection and water protection, because they are a part of us. And if, for example, in my case, I would feel very uncomfortable in my body if I didn't take part in these movements, because they're basically, such a huge part of us. And but also one thing that I think is very important about decolonization or indigenization is the personal aspect of decolonizing the way we think about ourselves and the world. And for me, it's been very helpful to talk with other Indigenous artists and land protectors about these issues, about how they keep themselves well and healthy and have hope in these times where we have so much going on. And I feel that is something that I very much want to keep working on. It's a continuous process, but definitely something that is very important if we're gonna have the strength to survive and thrive in Sápmi today and in the future. I'm very much about dreaming about and thinking about and creating Indigenous futures. And yes, if anyone wants to talk to me about stuff like that, I'm very happy to engage, because I feel that that's something that we really need to prioritize, to dream and think and create positively and positive futures for ourselves. That's what we're fighting for. So yeah, I'm very interested in that.
We had talked before about talking about land protection and indigenizing queerness. Did you get to talk about what you wanted to say there, or did you have more that you wanted to talk about there?
A part of indigenizing myself has been actually in part of creating an episode for the podcast called Indigenizing Queerness, where we started to talk about with an amazing Sámi artist called Timimi Gasku Marak, and a really beautiful friend of mine called Nidarsika Paramalingam, who also is a Norwegian Tamil activist and writer, and a really, really talented person. And we went into this subject because we wanted to talk about queerness in a Sámi context or an indigenous context. And we got into some really nice themes there. And it's made me think a lot about my own identity, being non-binary, and tying that back to also being Sámi. Because in Sámi language, the only pronoun is son, and that can be used for all, everyone. So that encompasses all genders. And when you also go into the history and the really early sources of that's written about Sápmi, people who came to Sápmi, there is this kind of course, there is this alienation of these people, right? That no one has seen before, and it's so different and everything. But at the same time, it's this really interesting way, this really interesting ambiguity that is expressed when talking about Sámi people and gender. And I feel that, Sápmi, from a spiritual perspective, is a very matriarchal culture. But at the same time, I'm not sure how much gender really played a role in the past before the Christianization of Sámi people. And from the sources, they said that, these people are, it's like hell. You can't see the difference between man and woman. So I'm really intrigued. I feel like there must have been must have been a whole different world. And we are together with other queer Sámi, trying to puzzle that together a little bit. Not that we have to base everything about Sámi culture in the far past, but it really feels good to be able to tie it back to our ancestors, to queer ancestors, because it's very clear from sources that our way of relating to gender has been different than these Victorian gender roles that were pushed on us through Norwegianization and colonization and Christianization. So that's something I'm also really interested in figuring more out.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate you taking so much time, especially so late in the day, your time. Yeah, it was great chatting with you. Very interesting. And yeah, maybe sometime we'll have you back, talk even more about all of these topics. Because I know there's, way more things that I could have asked you about. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Heritage Voices podcast. You can find show notes at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com/Heritage Voices. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or the Google Play Music Store. Also, please share with your friends or write us a review. Sharing and reviewing helps more people find the show and gets the perspectives of Heritage Voices' amazing guests out there into the world. Don't we just need more of that in anthropology and land management? If you have any more questions, comments, or show suggestions, please reach out to me at jessica@livingheritageanthropology.org. If you'd like to volunteer to be on the show as a guest or even a co-host, reach out to me as well, jessica@livingheritageanthropology.org. You can also follow more of what I'm doing on Facebook at Living Heritage Anthropology and the nonprofit Living Heritage Research Council, or on Twitter at Living Heritage A. As always, huge thank you to Lyle Belenqua and Jason Nez for their collaboration on our incredible logo.
This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Cultural Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Rachel Roden.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.